The painting depicts a natural philosopher, a forerunner of the modern scientist, recreating one of Robert Boyle's air pump experiments, in which a bird is deprived of air before a varied group of onlookers. The group exhibits a variety of reactions, such as grief, disbelief, and dismay. But for most of the audience, scientific curiosity overcomes concern for the bird. The central figure looks out of the picture as if inviting the viewer's participation in the outcome. Historical background: in 1659, Robert Boyle commissioned the construction of an air pump, then described as a pneumatic engine, which is known today as a vacuum pump. The air pump was invented by Otto von Guericke in 1650, though its high cost deterred most contemporary scientists from constructing the apparatus. Boyle, the son of the Earl of Cork, had no such concerns. After its construction, he donated the initial 1659 model to the Royal Society and had a further two redesigned machines built for his personal use. Aside from Boyle's three pumps, there were probably no more than four others in existence during the 1660s. Christian Huygens had one in The Hague, Henry Power may have had one at Halifax, and there may have been pumps at Christ College, Cambridge, and the Montmore Academy in Paris. Boyle's pump, which was largely designed to Boyle's specifications and constructed by Robert Hooke, was complicated, temperamental, and problematic to operate. Many demonstrations could only be performed with Hooke on hand, and Boyle frequently left critical public displays solely to Hooke, whose dramatic flair matched his technical skill. Despite the operational and maintenance obstacles, construction of the pump enabled Boyle to conduct a great many experiments on the properties of air, which he later detailed in his new experiments physico-mechanical, touching the spring of the air and its effects, made for the most part in a pneumatical engine. In the book, he described in great detail 43 experiments he conducted, on occasion assisted by Hooke, on the effect of air on various phenomena. Boyle tested the effects of rarefied air on combustion, magnetism, sound, and barometers, and examined the effects of increased air pressure on various substances. He listed two experiments on living creatures. Experiment 40, which tested the ability of insects to fly under reduced air pressure, and the dramatic Experiment 41, which demonstrated the reliance of living creatures on air for their survival. In this attempt to discover something about the account upon which respiration is so necessary to the animals that nature hath furnished with lungs, Boyle conducted numerous trials during which he placed a large variety of different creatures, including birds, mice, eels, snails, and flies, in the vessel of the pump and studied their reactions as the air was removed. Here, he describes an injured lark. The bird for a while appeared lively enough, but upon a greater exsuction of the air, she began manifestly to droop and appear sick, and very soon after was taken with as violent and irregular convulsions as are wont to be observed in poultry, when their heads are wrung off. For the bird threw herself over and over 2 or 3 times, and died with her breast upward, her head downwards, and her neck awry. By the time Wright painted his picture in 1768, air pumps were a relatively commonplace scientific instrument, and itinerant lecturers in natural philosophy, usually more showmen than scientists, often performed the animal in the air pump experiment as the centerpiece of their public demonstration. These were performed in town halls and other large buildings for a ticket-buying audience, or were booked by societies or for private showings in the homes of the well-off, the setting suggested in both of Wright's demonstration pieces. One of the most notable and respectable of the traveling lecturers was James Fergusson FRS, a Scottish astronomer and probable acquaintance of Joseph Wright. Both were friends of John Whitehurst. Ferguson noted that a lungs glass with a small air-filled bladder inside was often used in place of the animal, as using a living creature was too shocking to every spectator who has the least degree of humanity. The full moon in the picture is significant as meetings of the lunar circle, renamed the Lunar Society by 1775, were timed to make use of its light when traveling. Painting background. During his apprenticeship and early career, Wright concentrated on portraiture. By 1762, he was an accomplished portrait artist, and his 1764 group portrait James Shuttleworth, his wife and daughter, is acknowledged as his first true masterpiece. Benedict Nicholson suggests that Wright was influenced by the work of Thomas Fry, in particular by the 18 bust-length mezzotints which Fry completed just before his death in 1762. It was perhaps Fry's candlelight images that tempted Wright to experiment with subject pieces. Wright's first attempt, a girl reading a letter by candlelight with a young man looking over her shoulder from 1762 or 1763, is a trial in the genre and is fetching though uncomplicated. Wright's An Experiment on a Bird in the Air Pump forms part of a series of candlelit nocturnes that he produced between 1765 and 1768. There is a long history of painting candlelit scenes in Western art. Although, as Wright had not at this day traveled abroad, there remains uncertainty as to what paintings he might have seen in the original as opposed to prints. Nicholson, who made studies of both Wright and other candlelight painters, such as the 17th-century Utrecht Curvagisti, thought their paintings among the largest in the style, those most likely to have influenced Wright. However, Judy Edgerton wonders if he could have seen any, referring to influences of the far smaller works of the Leiden Finchilder Gottfried Schalken, 1643 to 1706, whose reputation was much greater in the early 18th century than later. He had worked in England from 1692 to 1697, and several of his paintings can be placed in English collections. Although he was the leading expert writing in English, Nicholson does not suggest that Wright is likely to have known of the 17th century candlelit narrative religious subjects of Georges de Latour and Trophime Bigot, which, in their seriousness, are the closest works to Wright that are lit only by candle. The Dutch painter's works and other candlelit scenes by 18th century English painters such as Henry Moreland, father of George, tended instead to exploit the possibilities of semi-darkness for erotic suggestiveness. Some of Wright's own later candlelit scenes were by no means as serious as his first ones, as seen from their titles: Two Boys Fighting Over a Bladder and Two Girls Dressing a Kitten by Candlelight.